After days of traveling, all the toil's starting to get to you. It's feeling like this will never end. Always going on, always something else, something happening. You just wonder, is there ever going to be a break? You start feeling just all alone. When one of your traveling companions comes up to you, puts a hand on your shoulder and says, "Are you all right?" Hi there. Dr. Megan Connell here, psychologist and dungeon master, and this is Psychology at the Table. In this episode, we're going to talk about just the basics that you can do to be supportive of your players and how to be more inclusive of people at the table who are struggling. So, basic step number one, and I see this one ignored everywhere, and it needs to happen. Talk to your players. If somebody's having a problem, talk to them. Ask them, what's going on? Hey, I noticed that you've been having some problems lately. I noticed that you and so don't seem to be getting along. Or I noticed that you've been a little bit more withdrawn lately. Is everything okay? When you talk to somebody, remember a few things. Number one, talk to them privately. Pull them aside discreetly after the game. Maybe say something like, "Hey, I have a question about your character. I have an idea for something for them and I want to know your thoughts on it." And when everybody's out and you're one-on-one with them, talk to them. Another thing, keep what they tell you private. This isn't gossip fodder for the rest of the group. This is you trying to find out what's going on with your friend and player to see if there's anything that you can do to help them. And then also just listen. You don't have to solve their problem. You'd be surprised at how often it's just this simple act of listening to somebody that can be the most helpful thing to them and validating what they're going through. If they're going through a lot, you don't need to fix it for them. Sometimes just saying, "Wow, I didn't realize all that was going on with you. Yeah, I can see why you're feeling bad." And then if you're willing to help, ask, but don't expect them to have anything that you can do to help. Again, just being a willing listener can be a very big help to people. If one of your players is having a pretty significant issue, they're going through a depression, they're having a really hard time with anxiety, they're having relationship problems, and you think they need to talk to somebody, encourage them to do so. Maybe even be willing to sit down and help them find a professional locally that they can talk to. Don't offer things that you're not willing to do, though. Make sure that if you are making an offer of helping, that it is something that you're okay with doing. Like maybe having one lighthearted game or giving this player a much-needed victory of some kind, a heroic moment, if you will. But just be willing to listen and talk to them and hear what's going on. A lot of times, dungeon mastering is people management. When you get a group of players together, when you get a group of people together, there's bound to be conflict at times. And it's not your job as the dungeon master to fix it all the time, but sometimes to bring attention to it and have the players address the issue. A couple of other things are to de-escalate situations. You'd rather intervene early than late. So especially if you notice some players are starting to get snippy with one another, talk to them about that. Sit down and be like, "What's going on here? Why is this happening?" You don't want it to build into a humongous blow-up fight if you can prevent it early on. A couple of other things that you can do at your table to help make sure that it's the type of game that everybody wants to play and that everyone's on the same page is some just basic gaming stuff, like having a session zero. Some topics you want to cover at your session zero that might not normally come up when you're thinking about the type of game you want to play are no-go topics. I think that's a really important one. Find out what are the things that are just too much for you guys? What are things that you do not want to see in your game? Some people might not want to hear religions talked about or bad-mouthed. Other people might have a real hard time if something bad happens to kids. Sexual violence sometimes can be a very hot-button issue for people. So have a conversation with them about what are the things in a game that you don't want to see. When we have the same expectations, that can really help alleviate a lot of problems before they start. Also, during session zero, talk about how are we going to do conflict resolution in here. Understand that we are a group of players and we are probably going to fight at times. So how do we resolve that? What are we going to do to take care of that if there is an issue that comes up? I'm going to put links down in the doobly-doo to tell you how to find people and how to find good psychologists, some tips on finding therapists, and I hope that those will be helpful to you. Also just basic other resources, like a list of good questions to have during your session zero. I hope that stuff is helpful to you, and again, any of the specific disorders and problems that we're going to talk about going forward are all going to go off the basis that you have done step one, talk to your players, okay? Talk to them, find out what's going on. Then after we talk to them, then we can start implementing some of the things that we're going to talk about in later videos. Anyway, this was the basics video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that this helps everybody find a place at the table.